Many ski property buyers like the idea of renting their chalet when they're not using it, but the rental market's changed. There's more competition, expectations around returns need to be realistic, and the best performing properties are usually the ones that have been thought through properly from the start. In this conversation, we speak with Justin Hollett from OVO Network, a specialist high-end chalet rental platform based in the French Alps. We cover what buyers need to know before relying on rental income, including short-term rental rules in France, how saturated the market's become, what makes a chalet stand out, and why small details like amenities, layout, photography, and owner usage can make a big difference. So if you're thinking about buying a French ski property and renting it out, this is a useful place to start. Today, we're joined by Justin Hollett from OVO Network, and we're going to be discussing all things rental property, especially in France. Tell us a bit about OVO Network, who you are, what you do, and how you can help some of the clients.
Yeah, yes, it sounds good. We're essentially a high-end chalet rental platform. We provide two services. The easiest way to explain the value we add is we essentially work with about 250 chalets around the French Alps, mostly in Savoie, and 80% of the people book those chalets book directly via our website. So provide two expertises, two services. One is technologies for owners to list and make money from their rental chalets, and two is a rental platform that generates bookings similar to Airbnb does, but very, very specialized in high-end chalets. I grew up in Chamonix, and this is a company that I helped build in its second phase. It was very much a startup when we came in, and today we're really finding a position in the market of ourselves. I've learned a whole lot about the rental market, and I'm hoping to share some of my experience with your clients.
Yeah, perfect. It sounds like we've got a crossover of clients as well. You know, sort of high-end chalets. That's roughly what we usually sell and get involved with, especially in the ski resorts. So I see there's a nice map there behind your head. Is that your local area?
This is our local area, just kind of mapped by ski resorts. Hopefully it's kind of our North Star for all the areas we want to be in. But I need to learn a bit of German to do a bit more. But in France, could have a look at all the places you haven't been. There's so many places to go skiing. Really, it's just I haven't even in 7 years I haven't seen all the resorts yet. So this map hopefully will help us get there. We'll ski everywhere there is to ski.
For sure. Yeah, lots to choose from over there in France for sure. Okay, let's get into it then. So obviously a lot of our buyers they're looking to buy a ski chalet not only for themselves but also to rent out as well. So tell us a bit. Can you actually rent ski properties and how does that process work?
I want to preface this type of conversation about legally and what we're actually allowed to do by saying, yeah, we're definitely a rental platform. We're not a legal company. We're not an accountant. The official advice definitely comes somebody like Max from EWP or other specialists that can really give official background on this. Kind of can take it from a high perspective as a local who grew up here and also has 6-7 years of experience. I can give historical context to what the regulation looks like and what buyers need to understand to get when they're looking to buy and they need to rent. I'll start with the conclusion. I mean, there isn't really much to worry about, which is great. I mean, you don't need to listen to anything else, but I'd like to give a bit of history because I think in the news there's been a lot of mention about laws in France that are quote unquote anti-Airbnb. So there was a law passed in 2024 called the Loi Le Meur, which was very much the first set of regulation to say, Airbnb is an enemy of ours, or Airbnb, so to speak. It's funny that Airbnb is a synonym of all short-term rentals, but we can move from that. Historically, there's been a lot of animosity in small villages against, rental properties. They're either empty all the time or they're rented all the time. They don't build up communities. And so on a national level, for a country like France, you can see how, they're trying to make sure taxes are paid. It's a social state. We need to make some money. They're trying to point their finger at anywhere they can make a bit more tax revenue. On a national level, there's a lot of pressure from local communities to make sure that Airbnbs are regulated. And so they passed this law. But the reality is this law is just delegating delegating rules to local communes. And in our region, local communes are completely dependent on rental. There's no incentive for local communities to say, we don't want people to rent out their second homes, because then they'll just be empty all the time. And there's nothing. The only thing you need to understand, I think, is that local communities. So I grew up in Chamonix. It's hard to live in Chamonix. Rent is high, cost of living is high. There's not a lot of high paying wages. And we need to find a balance in rental properties between locals being able to afford to live in town and second homeowners being able to enjoy their property and make sure it's rented to keep the communities alive. And so, on a local perspective, we haven't worked with a single local commune outside of Chamonix that is trying to put massive regulation on Airbnbs. In Chamonix, it exists mostly in the center of town, and if somebody is from Chamonix, they can get in touch with us so we can kind of share a lot of the information is about that. But you can see how everybody lives in local communities. We need to find a balance that works for locals to actually live places and keep the costs of rent down for locals, but not at the expense of the entire local economies. It's good to give that bit of history, I think, when it comes to it. That there has been a lot of news about anti-Airbnb laws, but if you're going to delegate them to local communities, we're not in the middle of nowhere where there isn't a real dependence on Airbnbs. So as of now, no commune has used their new powers to massively regulate or add risk to a purchase of a high-end property, especially a large chalet in the region.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess it's good to, like you said, good to have the backstory and the history, and also, it sounds like it's semi-regulated but not really enforced. Am I right in saying that?
There has been, at a national level, a law passed to say we've done something against the Airbnb problem. And what's hard is that there isn't a representative of our whole region to rally against that and say, no, Airbnb is actually good in a few ways. So there is no representation. There isn't any way to protect that. The law that was actually passed hasn't changed anything fundamentally. It's a bit more tax to pay, but it's nothing that hurts anyone fundamentally. And they've passed on the ability for local communities under real pressure to find rental properties for locals to regulate. And Chamonix has done that mostly in the center of town, because rental properties outside big chalets will never be owned by locals working for the lifts or for the local restaurants. But small apartments should definitely be available for locals to live and work in town. But on a regional level, there isn't a single commune that's looking at their Airbnbs and saying, we have too much pressure, people can't afford, and the problem is all the rental properties. It's not just that; it's just the price of property as a whole. And so regulating that will mean less people will come skiing. That's just not what they want. So I think that's what I'm trying to say.
No, it does make sense. It does make sense. And like you said, it's hard to find that balance at the end of the day. But a continuous challenge, not just in France, but also, you hear stuff in Barcelona and the Canaries, etc., etc. I know it's completely different.
It's great as a buyer for you guys, also, to everyone who wants to buy a big asset in that area, to respect the local communities as well. And I think we're lucky that most of the buyers who have are trying their best, and they need to respect that. If you want the restaurants in town, you need to hire seasoners, and everyone understands that. And as a buyer, I think you appreciate that. And so far, most of the people we work with have. And so there's no real pressure. Everyone's trying to everyone loves the place they end up investing in, and together we're all kind of moving in the right direction. But I don't want local communities or buyers to look at rental as an enemy in any way. It's just a balance to be found.
Cool. So can you give us some market context? I know we're just coming out off the back of the 2026 season.
Yeah, so we talk about these are the two biggest factors, I think, when it comes to buying a property and these renting. Is one, regulation, which it is complicated but looks positive for the moment. And the second is kind of the market itself. And it's pretty simple to understand the market. Since COVID, the number of properties for rent in Savoie and Savoie has doubled. Demand has not doubled. It's growing, and it's growing especially year-round since COVID. A lot of local French domestic tourists have discovered the area in summer and off-season, and they're falling in love with it. But those people are also becoming buyers. The problem is that that's just made the market very saturated. And that's something really buyers need to understand if they have any need to have a decent rental business on the back to finance their businesses. They're coming into a very saturated market. The demand has not followed supply and they need to understand how to differentiate themselves.
That brings us on to the next point, which is projections. Can you trust projections? I know we get projections from people like yourselves, and obviously we have lots of data on site. What's your thoughts on projections? Obviously nowadays we've got the internet, AI, etc., projections all over the place. What's your take on that?
It does come back to the issue of supply and demand. I think the projection issues, they can become unreliable if you don't understand how competitive the market is. Somebody's going to give you a lovely looking projection. Maybe 10 years ago, those projections would have been very reliable, but now they depend on very fine details being hit. Simple things like having a quality presentation online once you've set up listings, that your property itself is really attractive, that the pricing is really attractive, that you are using the property, things like that. And so when we're looking at projections, what we've seen, there was a recent study by Knight Frank, which was interesting, saying that the expectations have lowered in regards to yield when it comes to over the price of buying. So we've seen it pretty consistently on our end. Knight Frank was saying owners expect about 3% yields on their investment. That's probably where your expectations should start. If you find the right property and you have the right consultant with you, you can find a really great rental property. Or if you thought about every little detail, there's ways to make sure that the projections that you're getting that are probably really interesting to you are actually achieved. But I think the approach needs to be today on a very saturated market. How do I ensure that my property stands out to hit my projection so I can actually get my financing the way I want and that I'm not stressed out by my financing situation? No, it's a competitive business approach that you need to take as a buyer. You're almost starting a new business. And so every detail needs to be thought through and done professionally. When maybe 15 years ago, you could just start an Airbnb listing with a couple of pictures, took on your phone, and you'd be all right. But now it requires a level of professionalism to stand out on such a competitive market.
Interesting. Yeah. So the I guess key takeaways from that is 3% is, again, I'm not gonna quote you on that entirely, but like you said, if your expectations are starting, it's a good place for you to start. So it gives a good idea for people, our buyers especially, to have an idea of what their ROI is going to be, or at least can be. Again, you talked about details, how details matter. What kind of things can people do to stand out from the crowd? Can you give us some examples?
We've all done it. You're going on a website, you're looking, you put a number of people in a search chat, you put some dates in, and then you get hit with this list of 1,000+ properties, random prices, random qualities. There's just so much happening. And so there's two ways to stand out. And I think there's two types of properties that are doing well in today's market. One are going to be very simplistic, competitively priced properties. Okay. And then the other one is going to be properties that are a bit more high end. So properties like ours, I think we're lucky to work in our market, that are high end chalets with indoor and outdoor spaces that have things that you can do in that property that you can't do in anything else. So amenities are the most important thing. So once let's take the example again of somebody doing a research on Airbnb. Once you get thrusted or you get 1,000 properties up in your face, the first thing you're going to start doing is filtering. You're going to use tick boxes to filter things. So the most important thing is having good characteristics. It's just black and white. Do I have a good bedroom bathroom ratio? Do I have a hot tub? Do I have a sauna? Do I have these sort of things to stand out in a very busy market? And then the next step is then the details. It's your photography of your decoration. It's unique dedicated spaces for cyclists or for your family to play in your backyard, space for your kids to hang out and not really bother you for a couple of days so you can have a breather. It's mostly about being really attractive to the people who go to the mountains, and those are families and athletes. And from the chalet, there's so much you can do, even on a rainy day. So those are the two marks we're looking at. Is once you get thrusted with the basic details, is their price interesting? Are you being seen in filter results? Little things do you have to make me fall in love with your property? And that's going to be really tailored to the person who's searching. So investing in the region because you love downhill biking, then make your property the greatest place for downhill bikers to stay, and you'll attract more people than your neighbor.
Makes complete sense. And would you say you should target a certain, as you were saying there, main two, athletes, obviously skiers, mountain bikers, usually obviously in the resorts, and families? So would you say you'd have to try and target one specific kind of person that's looking for a rental, or would you try and cater a little bit to everyone?
I think those first characteristics are just black and white. There's no catering. It's how many people can I fit in my property comfortably? Can I get a good bedroom bathroom ratio? Can I get amenities that are really going to make this stand out? Those are just kind of basic. Just do that. Which is the last step. If you don't have the first two, available at a certain time for a certain group of people with the right amenities, the right level of comfort, you just won't be seen in a search filter. But once you get to people starting to compare 2 or 3 listings, that's where you can really pick your niche. There's so much demand. Obviously, most of our guests year round are French guests, because the French love traveling in France. So this is excluding Christmas, New Year's, and the major ski weeks. But if you're going to book year round, you're going to get a lot of French guests. So pétanque, great idea. You're also going to get a lot of families because it's family holidays, multi-generational. So kids, parents, grandparents, tailoring to all 3 of those types of people is great. And then people who love going out in the mountains. So again, cyclists, hikers, having space for them to store their kit is easy wins. But then those tiny details, I really put that back onto the owner. Make it your own, and then the photography that'll come through. So it depends on the property and it depends on the people, and that's what's cool about short-term rental. It's not a hotel. It's not just copy and paste. We're not trying to make as much money every week. It's really dependent on the owners and what they want, and you can make that shine through and make it a strength.
Let's put a case scenario in there. Someone's looking to buy a ski chalet in France, around Chamonix, or somewhere in the Three Valleys. They're looking to rent it out short term, generate an ROI when they're not using the property. What would your key takeaway to that client be from this video?
Yeah, I guess that legally you can do it. There's not too much of an issue, but within balance of the local community. I think that was kind of the main point from the first one. The second was we're in a really saturated market. I think the example we used, the data that I shared, is the best way to explain that. Is the number of properties in the market has doubled since COVID, more than doubled since COVID now. And that really makes it really clear to anybody who's investing in a property that we're in a competitive market. We need to take advantage of every opportunity we have to stand out. And then for that, the details really matter. You need to understand your needs for the property. You need to understand the village you're going in, the advantages and the disadvantages of your property, your spaces, and play into that. So if you have a small property, easy to clean, let's make a cheap rental and try to get it working. And we're going to try to make sure that my cleaners and the local people who support me have work and they want to work for my property, and your business won't be a hassle to you anymore. Same thing with the bigger properties. When you've got a great outdoor space, we'll add some specific things that make it help people project themselves doing things in your property and really stand out through unique, dedicated spaces that make your property perfect for one type of person, and make it your own. Have fun with it. I think the only issues we ever have with rentals when owners are under too much financial stress and they don't love it. And so that comes back to the last point of view. If there is a real financial stress on your investment here, your rental's not going to work. You're going to be too stressed about people breaking your property, not respecting your business. You're going to be too stressed about the cost of your cleaning and things like that. You need to set your expectations right. You need to play into your advantages and understand the rental market. That's why it's great to get in touch with groups of professionals that'll help you out. So yourself, and you've learned a lot from this chat, you can share that with people, but everyone we speak to, we want them to understand this, because there's nothing worse for anybody than having a property that's just empty all the time because somebody can't enjoy it themselves or they can't rent it to somebody else. That's what nobody wants. So I think that'll be the biggest takeaways.
Honestly, Justin, I'll be honest with you, this is a really, really good information, really helpful for our buyers looking to go down that route. We do have a lot of people that are looking to generate, like you said, no one wants their property empty, neither for themselves or for when they could be earning some money out of it. So super helpful. Some really interesting points there, some really good takeaways as well. And love the history on not just Chamonix, but also all the resorts around France as well. So good to set expectations. So thank you so much for jumping on. Perfect. Thanks very much, Justin.